Hello and welcome everyone. In the late 1980s, Sony came out with their Video Walkman series. This is a portable 8mm VCR TV combination unit, the first one of which was the Sony GV-8. Now, I would have given anything to have one of these devices when I was at that age. It was the dream machine by far. I first heard about this machine being advertised when I flipped through a video magazine. The video magazine was from September of 1988, and way down on page 52, there was this article about this portable television VCR combo. I had never heard of something like that before, and it was quite unique, quite interesting, and by far the go-to gadget I really wanted to have. Now, I've copied the article here for you guys to take a look at the whole thing because it was actually spread across multiple pages. However, the pricing that they had for this at the time was $1,300 US. Now, converted into today's money, you're looking at well over $3,000. In fact, nearly $3,500. Now, I could never have afforded that when I was that age, and it just wasn't going to happen. But now, so many years later, I've acquired several of these devices, and I'd like to show it to you today. The device is not very light. It's got a lot of heft to it. It's very solidly built, and it's very beautiful. It has a lot of features built into it with a lot of different connectors and adapters on different parts of the device. On the side, we see the camera input, a switch to be able to choose between seeing TV, camera, or line input, the line inputs for both video and audio, as well as the line outputs. Looking at the top, we can see all the playback controls, as well as the power switch and channel controls. On the left side of the unit itself has the earphone plug, the controllers for the tuner for changing from VHF to UHF, and the tape speed for recording. But there's also the settings on the display for doing the timers. The speaker is located in the front of the unit. The device weighs about 1,200 grams, or about 2 pounds 10 ounces, without a battery or a tape inside it. So taking a look at the unit from this angle, we can take a look at the little clip that's used to hold down the top. So the top can actually lock into place, which is quite convenient so it doesn't just flap around. There are controls on the top of the monitor. On the bottom of the unit, we see this small compartment for a backup battery for the clock and the timer settings, as well as where the main battery connects. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect up an external power supply to this unit so we can actually see it in action and running. Now this connects the same as a battery would, kind of slides into place and clicks onto the back of the unit. Once it's in place, the little battery removal has to be used to take it off the unit at the back. I'm going to go ahead and turn this unit on. Now, obviously, there are no live broadcasts anymore for the UHF or VHF channel bands. Here, the green bar is indicating that it's searching through the VHF channels. As you can see, it's just not picking up anything. There's nothing to pick up. This was an early time for LCD TVs, and these used the advanced thin film transistor or TFT active matrix display type. They sometimes suffer from viewing angle issues. In this case, the viewing angle is quite good for a portable unit. Now I'm going to broadcast a signal locally so we can actually have something to watch on this particular device. It's going to be on the UHF channel, some point around channel 14. So I'm going to switch it over to UHF, and then I'm going to go ahead and just scan it across and see if we can locate that particular channel. One of the problems with these devices is they're hypersensitive. So there might be just noise there, and it's just picking up noise as it's scattering through. You'll notice that the red bar disappears from time to time. That's actually just not picking up a station or thinking there's a station there even though there's not. The sensitivity is very high, but obviously analog broadcasts are no longer available. So let's tune in my local broadcast, which is actually just a feed coming from a VCR going through a small little broadcast unit in here in my house. Now the vertical roll is actually coming from the external device. Let me just get it in here. There we go. I have something coming through. So another option is to go through a line input into the device or through a cable in through an external antenna. On the side here, we see the option for being able to connect a line input. We can connect the audio and the video input and switch the small switch beside it over to line input, which allows us to use a direct line feed from a device such as a video game machine or a VCR. In this case, it's actually hooked up to a VHS VCR, so the screen that you're seeing on there is coming from that. The display allows us to take a look at the clock, the recording speed, and the tape counter setting if there was a tape in place. Okay, so let's try using this device as it was intended. We'll grab an 8mm tape. In this case, I'm using a standard Sony GV-8 MP120. This particular tape has a Bond movie recorded onto it. That was actually done by this actual machine. The eject button is on the left side of the unit, has a little bit of a protect button in the middle of it so you don't accidentally hit it. And you open it up and you can see the mechanism inside. You can load a tape simply by inserting it in the front and lowering the top. The tape is automatically loaded around the video heads, which is good in some ways because playback is instant as soon as you press play. The downside is that if the battery ever dies, the tape is actually locked inside the unit and wrapped around the heads, and you'll have to recharge the battery or replace it to get the tape back out. The audio quality is actually quite good, however the internal speaker is quite terrible. I'll give you a direct connection so you can actually hear the quality of the sound. Note that it is limited by the recording of the movie itself.
I give up. I know the diamonds are in the body, but where?
Elementary, Dr. Leiter.
The speed at which these devices do fast forwarding and rewind is quite dismal. In fact, I'll hold it up to the camera here. You can sort of see the tape moving inside. It's fairly slow, very similar to most camcorders. A lot of the tabletop VCRs are actually quite a bit faster at being able to wind tapes, and this is pretty hard on batteries as well. So normally you probably would not want to rewind your tapes too often in this machine if you didn't need to. The screen quality is actually very good for an early TFT LCD. Colors are still vibrant, very little damage to the screen. So is it worth getting one of these devices and repairing them? I have several of the devices and I've repaired a number of them over the years. One of the biggest problems with these devices is the different components inside that can actually go bad. For the main thing, the plastic that's used is very brittle at this age. And as you can see from some of these pieces, they're really rough. Small bits break off very easily. It's very hard. You can 3D print some replacement pieces or maybe find a unit that's been stored in a good location that doesn't have that problem. But generally speaking, most of the plastic is actually very brittle and very easy to break. If we take a look at the circuitry, one of the issues you have is obviously leaky capacitors, a very common problem. In these particular devices, though, the problem is the density of where some of those components are. So you can see some of the electrolytic capacitors in the corner of this one. The damage to the board was extreme, very severe, and to be honest, it's very hard to get all of these connections redone. As you can see, the damage has gone right through the board to both sides. So this board has been modified, it has been tweaked and restored, but it's a lot of work to do so. The mechanisms are very solid. They do not have a lot of the plagues that come with some of the later VCRs of some of the plastic becoming worn and broken. This particular one is just a spare. The video head has been removed and taken out. These also use a linear switch for doing the tape position sensor, which actually makes it very easy to work on. Again, if you're taking a look at the electronic circuits for things like the tuner, you're probably not going to use the tuner, but most of the capacitors that go bad are actually underneath the cans, and they have to be replaced, otherwise they will do damage to the boards. The main board is where all the action takes place, and it has quite a number of capacitors that do tend to leak. There's a foldable board on the side which contains the power supply. On this particular board, you might notice that there's a lot of capacitors that have been replaced. This particular board is a spare, and a lot of the capacitors were actually replaced with ceramic or tantalum at the time. This is going back a little ways. I'll give you a couple of more views of some of the more problematic areas of this particular design. Something else to note is that the service manual is actually available for this device. It's completely free. You can find them online. This one is for the GV-8E, which is the AEP model. But to be honest, the circuitry, the information that's in there applies to the different units easily enough. There's not that much of a variance on the actual boards for the things that normally go wrong. So there we have our look at the Sony GV-8 Video Walkman TV VCR combination that came out in the late 1980s. I hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to producing more videos and seeing you here next time. As always, just have fun and enjoy life. Take care.